MasonWorks Marketing here on Conscious Business Zone. Today with a mystic. Oh my gosh, we've got Dave the Mystic, Dave Barnett here. And I've been following Dave for years. And I didn't realize how magical he was until I saw his bio. And Dave, welcome. Welcome to Conscious Business Zone.
Well, thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So, Dave, I want to first ask, because you've been doing this for 35 years,
Uh-huh.
how did you discover that you were a mystic?
That came over time. When I started in 1983, I was working as an aerospace engineer, and I continued to do that for decades after that. So I really am a rocket scientist. But in 1983, I witnessed some things from a friend that I reconnected with at my 10th high school reunion.
Oh.
And he showed me that he could alter electronics with his mind. And he was reluctant to show me until we went to his house. And then he showed me pretty mind-blowing things that I, being an electrical engineer myself, I knew that he couldn't be faking. There's no way to rig it. And it forced me to return to Denver. This was back in Wichita. Return to Denver where I was living, and I'm still here, to reevaluate my views of reality. Now, I was open to psychic phenomena. My mom and I practiced it when I was in junior high and senior high because she got interested in astrology. And so I was open to the idea, but I wasn't doing anything with it. And then starting in 1983, I figured I needed to know more about reality. I was running out of answers in my engineering equations. They didn't explain reality. They're very good for building things, but there's no insight into what is the ultimate matter or ultimate energy. So I got involved in energy healing classes and developed those gifts. I took classes in psychic development. I got involved with a group that was doing channeling of ascended masters, typically Tibetan ascended masters. And I also got involved in meditation, and I continued doing this sort of on the side. I had to be a little bit of Clark Kent and Superman. I really couldn't talk about this at my aerospace company, Lockheed. Just wouldn't have been well received. Yeah. And then in 2000, I left Lockheed and went to a small renewable energy company, and I was there for 3 years. And in that time period, as I got readings and insights from people channeling for me, I kept getting pushed. You need to grow it. You need to up your game. And in 2003, I won some contracts with the Air Force to do consulting, and a voice came down my head and said, well, now you have all the time you need, all the money you need, go learn everything you can about healing. And the time period from 2003 to 2007 was a time of great development. I did 2 years of psychic mentoring with the Denver medium. I learned about 10 different modalities of energy healing. I went to acupuncture school for a little while, found it wasn't for me, but I got a good grounding in Chinese medicine. And along the way, I was meditating heavily, and I really started to have transcendent experiences and really move forward. And many gifts started showing up. The gifts of being able to see past lives and work with those. The gifts of going down to people's personal self-created hells that are illusions and returning them back to the spiritual plane so they could get back on track for personal development. And not too long after that, I started doing the energy and entity clearing work. That started happening for me. A kind of a funny story on that, I was in Las Vegas with my wife on vacation, and a woman called and said, I'm a friend of your daughter's, and I thought you might be able to help me. My house has things going on, and I can't talk to my husband about it. He wouldn't be accepting. And she was having phenomena. She had some entity there that'd walk up behind her and say her name. She'd be laying in bed, and something would press on the covers. And these things were just going on. It was really bugging the little kids. They were seeing witches flying out of closets. Aww. And so I started working on this remotely. I said, I'll take a shot. And she had relief for about 2 weeks, and then she said, well, some of it's back, And that's when that other thing that I talked about, retrieving souls from hell, came in. I found that the previous owner, who they bought the house and nobody would tell them this, had hanged himself in the basement.
Oh my God.
He was in a personal hell, probably due to the guilt over suicide. And once I got him out of that hell and got him back in the spiritual plane, all the phenomena stopped, and that kicked me off on a career of doing energy and entity clearings. And based on that experience, I've always done those remotely. I never go to the site where there's things going on, so I clear people all over the world. I get referrals, Europe, South America. I have one coming up in Australia, Central America, lots in Canada. So that's another gift that showed up. And then recently, another gift of karma burning showed up. From what I'm seeing spiritually, the universe is reaching a point where we're going to move upwards in vibration so fast, we aren't going to have time to continue with a karma concept that, oops, you really messed up bad, you really hurt somebody else. You're going to come back 3 or 4 more times over the next 500 years to experience different aspects of that situation to see what it's like. We're running out of time for that. And so I'm doing karma burning for people where it's a guided meditation, and I take them through, and it releases all the karma between them and other people for all lifetimes. So they're squeaky clean. So these things just keep showing up for me. So a number of years ago, I just adopted the name Dave the Mystic because it seemed to be the best descriptor of who I am and what I do, and my spiritual insights as I continue to grow and help others grow.
Well, that's fantastic. Well, there's several things you said that's wonderful. First of all, that your mother was interested in some of this and encouraged you. That's very rare. I mean, only a handful of people that I know of were encouraged. You kind of put your hands over your mouth and didn't tell anybody what's really going on.
Absolutely.
Superpowers were hidden, that's for sure. When you said Clark Kent, that's the way I felt in corporate America, being psychic and intuitive, and just don't go there. You just say, my intuition says, because intuition's allowed, but the other stuff.
Yes.
But the other thing is your linear training, your linear thinking, left brain training must have helped you in a lot of ways to be able to make this accessible for people, because it makes you more grounded. Right?
Yeah. I have a very varied background. So when I got my electrical engineering degree, my bachelor's, I decided to focus on bioengineering. So I started taking anatomy and physiology and other life science courses. And then when I went to Michigan, I continued that, and my focus for my electrical engineering degree was in bioelectrical sciences, which deals with the nervous system and the brain and how they function. So unknowingly along the way, I picked up a lot of tools to help me explain things to people. Later on, I got a degree in psychology, and then later on, I got another degree, another master's in computer science. But my dad was both an engineer and an Episcopal priest. My family has many psychologists, both two of my brothers, their spouses. My daughter is a master's. And so what I found, that this gray hair has been an advantage. I can pretty much help people get over any hurdles they have to accepting this or being open to it, because I can explain it biblically, theologically. I can explain it from Eastern spirituality viewpoint. I can explain it from biology. I have a pretty good, walk-around view or knowledge of quantum mechanics and how that allows for this type of thing, and has phenomena that's happening that doesn't obey normal physics, and we accept it because we can repeatedly test it and see it happen. And the other thing fundamentally I tell people is, I said, look, I'm practical. Number one, I look for validations for this from multiple sources when I get things that are over the top. And then the other thing is, I said, if this didn't work, I'm enough of a practical person that I wouldn't keep using a system for 30 years that didn't work and banging my head against the wall. I'm not that kind of person. I use it because it works. I evolve my systems because I find that they work more effectively. And I'm very eclectic. I pick and choose when I'm working with clients on what systems will work with them. And I may change course right in the middle of a session and say, wow, I'm really getting a strong hit on past lives. We need to go look at some of those because some of that energy is coming through and affecting you maybe in a physical condition or something. So I really work with all this.
Wow. Well, yeah, you have a toolkit that's quite remarkable. When I was looking at your bio and all, you basically can assess what someone needs and offer solutions right away. And not everybody can. I mean, I think when I think of most of the healers that I use or I've worked with, I really label them in categories of I go to
Uh-huh.
for this one, and you really have a wonderful library of tools that you can use to help people. So could you share a story of you shared the story about the clearing the entities. Could you share a story about any of the other healings that were remarkable?
Oh, one that was fun. Every healer would like to have the instantaneous healing, the get up out of the wheelchair and walk. Everybody would love to have that. It doesn't happen very often. There are spiritual reasons why the people are experiencing those things, and sometimes it takes working with those spiritual reasons or even subconscious reasons to get rid of those blockages so they can release their condition and recover. But one that I had that was instantaneous. So a friend of mine who's retired, a woman, she's an artist. Her name's Jane. She wanted to help a friend of hers who was a little bit older, and he was retired from where she worked. She worked for the federal government, and he had a serious health condition. He had a tumor form on the femoral artery, so right up at the top inside of his thigh, there's a tumor there on the main artery. And so when they cut out the tissue, they had to splice in some artificial artery there to replace the artery they removed. And that didn't work very well for him. It had problems with sort of not being flexible in the right directions or collapsing, but he had a lot of pain. And so he was on crutches, and he had a daughter who was coming up to a wedding, and he had hoped to just be mobile enough, just even on his crutches, to make it down the aisle. So Jane said, well, Dave, why don't you come work with him? And so we went to his house. And I worked with him. He was on the couch, and I did energy healing work in a variety of modes with him. And then when I felt we were done, he got up, and Jane said, well, Dave, I'd like a turn. So I did some healing work with Jane. In the background, I kept hearing thump, 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 thump. And it's kind of like, well, this is a little distracting. I don't know what it is, but I'll figure it out later. So I finished with Jane, and we turned around. His crutches are cast to the side. He's testing his legs going up and down a half flight of stairs to a landing, back and forth. And then he grabs his truck keys and he said, I have errands to run. I'll see you guys later. Let yourselves out. And he disappears.
So it worked. Did it stay?
Yes, as far as I know, it stayed.
Wow.
Yeah.
See, that's the other part of the question I have. I have seen so many people get healed, and then because of whatever their belief systems were, the healing didn't stay. Have you seen that?
Oh, absolutely. And one of the things I do in my healing sessions is I have a worksheet of about 15 different spiritual causes of disease. I run into these people, other people run into them where they've tried everything, or they've tried Western medicine and it hasn't worked. They've tried some alternative medicine and it hasn't worked. And, we know they're trying things that normally would be effective. So I look at it from a higher level and say, what is it around you spiritually that is preventing you from accepting these treatments, from having them be effective? whether they're Western or alternative. And so I go through this list, and I have things on there that might be past lives. There's a past life influence. I find many people who have knee pain, hip pain, leg pain, things like that. It's come from crushing injuries in past lifetimes, and that energy is bleeding over. And so I walk them through scripts to disconnect their energies from those past lives, and also to help that past life form themselves, go through a forgiveness release of the people or the person or people who actually caused this injury, whether it's a nasty foreman at a rock quarry or as an enemy soldier on the battlefield with a big axe or a mace or something, those types of things. And so that's one of them. Another one that's really been showing up a lot in the past 4 or 5 years is the concept of parallel lives. Now here's how I view it. And again, I've had experiences myself with parallel lives or being in different universes, so I accept it. And the idea here is when you go through life and you make significant decisions, when you choose at some turning point in your life, say you're choosing a spouse, you're choosing a career, something like that, you're choosing whether or not to have children, you spin off a copy of yourself, or maybe 2 or 3 copies, in parallel universes in similar living circumstances, but they choose the alternative.
Right.
This can be very rough for some people, because what I find is, okay, you're a teenage woman or a girl, and you're deciding to go to college, and you're on track for that. Your high school years are filled with academics. You, at that decision point, you may have spun off a copy of you that says, high school frankly sucks. I'm out of here. I'm dropping out. I can make my own way. And sometimes I find that these people who, quote, make their own way in the parallel universe, they end up in very rough life on the streets. They may even be in prostitution. They may be involved with drugs. They may be getting beat up a lot by supposed customers. And some of these aches and pains and life situations bleed over to the person here. And so I have the person here be a surrogate for the one in the parallel lifetime with the dire circumstances.
Wow.
We help that person put in core beliefs to change their life, to seek help, to get into a stable, ordinary job, to find housing, and then to let go of the need to reach out to the person here with their problems.
Is it like chords? Is that like being courted? Only it's your own essence?
Yeah. Energy cords are really more between chakras. These people are just energetically reaching out with the consciousness of their circumstances, seeking help any way they can. Maybe it's not even fully conscious that they're doing it, or that they're aware that there's another copy of themselves, but their energy is so strong they're reaching out. And so we help them with the person being a surrogate. And then once that's over, we help them release their need to reach out and seek help from the person in this reality.
So I just want to welcome Aaron's here, Rosemary's here, Elsie's here, Teresa's here, and Victoria. Hi, guys. Welcome, everyone. Teresa asked, have you ever helped anyone with tinnitus? What
tinnitus? The hearing?
Hearing, yeah. The ear brain condition. I've had it 35 years, and to date I've had no relief.
I've worked with it quite a bit. I've had mixed results. Tinnitus, I don't know why. It's very persistent, and it's difficult to treat no matter what system you use, as she's experienced 35 years. These types of things, I'm upfront with people that this can be difficult, and I'm willing to work on it, and there's a possibility of getting relief, but I'll just be upfront. This is a hard one to work with, and to a certain degree, I think some of these alternatives where you have the hearing aid that makes a little bit of noise to help mask it, things like that may be helpful. I know I have some of it in the background, and I just I don't hear it unless I look for it, so to speak. So, but I know that it's very harsh for some people.
Well, some days with the Schumann resonance changing, and some of the days this past year, I would say, that there's just this constant buzz on certain days. And it,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so I think she may be highly sensitive and an empath. She might be picking up on, her space, right?
Yeah, and there's other noises I hear, and when I check on them and then check with other people who I trust who are intuitive, uh, there's energies or noises that I hear from a spacecraft. And so sometimes if they're around, I hear these tones. They go dee 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 dee, things like that. And um, I've had a blackout in the house where every electronic was off. We had no power to the house, and I still get that. And then I check with other people who have better hearing than me. People are younger, and they walk around the house. They say, "Oh, can't hear a thing." And so then I check with my intuitive friends, and yeah, sure enough, I'm hearing something energetic.
Oh, that's great. Well, I was gonna ask about ETs, about your relationship, because do you feel that you have guides and support that are extraterrestrial?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. Here was one of the things where I learned my cultural upbringing and how strong it was because I had to get over something. Um, so I grew up in the Episcopal Church. My dad was an Episcopal priest. He started out as an engineer. He was an Episcopal priest for a number of years, and then my parents were divorced when I was around 11. And in the mid 60s, you couldn't be a divorced Episcopal priest and get a job, and so he went back to his management consulting. But a lot of culture with the church. So one time, a number of years ago, I'm going up to the healing temple I have in the spiritual plane where I do long distance work. And I have a number of people on essentially treatment tables there. And I'm starting to work on one of them, and I look up to see who's going to help because typically I have angels, archangels, I have doctors in spirit, other healers in spirit, maybe ascended masters. And I look up, and there's some ETs there. And it really threw me. It threw me that, wait a second, how do we have ETs in, quote, our heaven?
Because you're a hybrid, probably.
Yeah, well, it turns out that there are, yes, we have our spiritual plane. Our spiritual plane is a vibrational level that is accessible by others who have the capability to adjust their vibration. It is not a special place that only humans go to because we're the chosen people under our Creator. Our Creator created many races, and that spiritual plane is a place that we exist in an energetic form that doesn't have a body like we have here, but it does have a body that can be identified there. It has many different physical properties. And there are ETs that are so highly advanced that they can shift their vibration and show up in our heaven, so to speak. They can also go to other vibrational planes, and they can choose whether or not they manifest a body, and they can do that instantaneously and come and go. And they don't necessarily need spacecraft to go anywhere. They may have some spacecraft that they pop into out of convenience to meet others, so they have sort of a focus point or a conference room. But having said all that, what I found is when I check, I get over 300 different races of ETs around the Earth right now. The Earth is in a major transition point, and it is of extreme interest to many races from around the universe and even other universes. And they're curious. The vast majority are either passive and watching us or actively helping us. A very small minority are unpleasant folks doing dark and nasty things, but part of our function here on the planet is to be challenged and to have the opportunity to learn and grow through these challenges. I call this planet a boot camp. Some of the channeled things from ETs say, you can make more spiritual progress on Earth in 10 minutes than you can on their planet in 1,000 years, because we don't have universal telepathy, so we can hide our thoughts and our intentions. We can still do bad things to other people. We have a lot of free will here. We really come in and hit the ground running. This is a boot camp, and this planet is not a paradise. It wasn't ever designed to be. It can never be perfect, because if it was perfect and everybody had a la-di-da life, everybody would become fat slugs and just roll around like roly-polies and never grow. So we come here for challenges to grow, and people lose sight of that, and they look at, gee, God, why did you do this to me? Why did you poop on my parade? And it's like, well, no, actually, this is a classroom. You chose the syllabus that you wanted to go through, that you wanted to be challenged for, and you have a lot of studying and learning to do. And when you try to cut classes and say, I'm just going to sit in the basement, eat pizza, and play video games, not a good plan. That's kind of wasting an opportunity to really move forward.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I agree. I call it Earth School, but I am a little more optimistic about where we're going, that we are.
Yes.
We may not have heaven on earth, but we have the choice of getting out of polarity, where you see in 0 point. At least that's my sense of it. And I'm hoping that by helping people, I think business is one of the fastest ways to make this big leap and jump. And that's the Conscious Business Zone, and interview people like you to give small business owners the resources to really go to the next level, because they're busy working, and hopefully if they're conscious businesses, they're really involved in their employees and in their customers, and in service, so they don't have time to go find you, Dave. That's why I was so excited to get you on, is that it gives them another resource to go to the next level. So going to the next level, I feel like all of us stood in line to get these bodies to come here right now, and we're going through this big change. How do you see this? I'm calling it the pause before the reset, and that's why that's why I said, I preface this with, I'm optimistic, because I feel that there is an opportunity for us to get out of this polarity we're in, because it's so distorted. But I don't want to temper what you're going to say. So anyway, so I'm just wondering how you see this time. We're in lockdown, or pretty much lockdown. We have the time now to reflect and to clean up, to release. But how do you see this?
For a number of years, even before 2012, I started seeing, my perception is that we are moving upwards in vibration very fast with the 12-12-2012. That really started zooming. I see it in my energy and entity clearing, because I see a whole lot more people dealing with entities. It's like the entities are coming out of the woodwork like cockroaches, because they feel like the wrecking ball is coming, and they don't want to be left behind. So I see rapid growth, and one of the things I see in that is the idea that there are higher vibration Earths that have been formed for us to migrate to. Now, this might sound really weird, might sound really sci-fi, but I see 4 higher vibration levels of Earth. The next one, I'll call it Earth 3.1 instead of our Earth 3.0 3D here. Looks quite a bit like us, but a lot of the environmental things are not an issue. A lot more clean living, and I see people moving to these. Now, this might sound really strange, but I feel that we've probably had over 1 billion people leave our Earth in the past few years to go to these higher vibration Earths, and sometimes major catastrophes like the tsunami in Fukushima provides a nice cover story for a lot of people to move, and the body count doesn't match up. But I also see the capability with no problem for the spiritual plane to find people, and say a couple has 4 sons, and all the pictures around the house have 4 sons, and all the track ribbons on the walls are for 4 sons. And then one day, suddenly, they wake up and they have 3 sons. They don't know the difference. The 4th son's whole time track, whole record is gone. That son was moved to one of these higher vibration planets. I think we're going to discover that we don't have close to 8 billion people on the planet. We're closer to 7 billion. And the demographers, the people who look at fuel usage, water usage, food usage, land resources, all that type of thing, are going to wonder, what the heck happened? We don't see the consumption that you'd expect from that number of people. So I think this is happening. And so when I see challenges like this COVID-19 pandemic, I see this as an opportunity for people to pause and reflect and to raise their consciousness. I don't see the creator saying, oh, you're good, you go here, and oh, you're bad, you go there. I don't see that at all. I see a system where you grow and you bubble up to your own natural level. And some people who are going to hide out from the COVID-19 or do fraudulent things in terms of finances or money or cheating other people or being lousy dictators in charge of a country. I see lower vibration Earths that ultimately they may go to. It's not a hell. It's just a place where they're going to, I'll say, be more at home with their views, but it's probably going to be a much harsher life. But if that's what they want, if that's how they see the planet, then that may be a place where they fit. So I see this kind of like the sorting hat in Harry Potter, where it decides which house you're going to, whether it's Gryffindor or Slytherin. I see you sort of self-selecting with the sorting hat on where you're ultimately going to go. And I also see this as a time period. I've seen it for a couple of years now. Many people are leaving the planet, both young people and elderly, and I think it's just because they see a closure on where things are and that they're ready to go. Not much more to learn here.
I see. Okay. So when you said 3.1, is that, so I've been using the construct of explaining this in dimensions: 3rd dimension, 4th dimension, 5th dimension. Yeah. And 4th dimension I see is polarity, which is what it feels like. There's so much polarity, not just an election year, but just right, wrong, indignant, not in 0 point peace and presence, but it's taking a stand either way, that activist kind of mentality. And then the 5th dimension is where it's not really 0 point, it's more in flow and co-creating with the universe, where you actually get to and it's not the top dimension, so there could be lots more dimensions past that, but that would be the start to be able to co-create, because you're capable of creating good. Because right now in the polarities section and in 3D, we're so emotional. If we had the full capacity to create instantaneously, we would. Can you imagine the mess we would make?
Oh, it'd be a real zoo here if everybody's thoughts instantly manifested. And a lot of people would be saying, turn it off, turn it off. How do I turn it off?
Well, I want to tell you, Harlan's here, Terry's here, Zach's here, Xana's here, and Zach. So Zach put, actually, there's no judgment. You can postpone your learning as long as you want. Time isn't linear. You can experience delay as long as it takes, because time isn't real in the way we see it. We think it is. Eventually, we all return home. I choose the lessons in earnest as my sole purpose. One may see beyond the veil. And that, thanks, Zach. Yeah.
Yeah, very, very nice. Very nicely put. That helps me something since people can see me. I want to demonstrate something here. Uh, so you can do this with your fingers. You can do it with pencils. But if I treat this thing here as being an indicator of a cause for an event, since Zach brought up time, and I look at this one as being the effect. So I have cause and effect.
Right.
I get a nail in my tire. I get a flat tire. What I've been seeing over the past few years is a shifting on these, and now they're somewhat at an angle to each other, and they're approaching the point where we're going to have a hard time discerning when the cause happened and when the effect happened. And I even see them shifting and going the other way, where I think ultimately we're going to see in a lot of cases the effect is happening and it goes back in time to formulate a cause. So it looks like we still have causality, but actually the effect happened first. And so we're going to see sort of an altering of cause and effect to effect and cause. And I'm seeing a whole lot of things happening on timelines and timeline jumping.
I'm fascinated with time. Grandmother Parisha, who's a Cherokee elder, was here, and someone said, "Well, what are you doing over the weekend workshop?" And I was like, "I don't know, grandmother." And you're out of time and space. You're just in presence, and whatever shows up, shows up. So what do you think? So when you're talking about these earths and talking about past lives, you are talking about the timeline, and maybe that there's
Yes.
a loop that you're stuck in. One of my clients erases that loop if there's a trauma loop. Is that what you're talking about? Is changing the timeline?
Yeah, and one of the things I don't know if you've talked about on your shows is the Mandela Effect, and the idea here is that many people may have a common memory of an event, but then you find a subset of people who remember it totally different. It came from the idea that they found a number of people have a memory that Nelson Mandela died in prison under apartheid, and he never made it out of prison. A much larger group remember him getting out of prison, and ultimately apartheid went away and he became elected president of the Republic of South Africa and was a great peacemaker and healer for getting into balance down there. So two very different views. And I'm personally finding a whole lot of things within my family. I have three very highly educated brothers. Two are PhD psychologists and one's an MBA. And I have an excellent memory for things, events, what happened, the people, the emotions, trivia, things like that. And I will compare my memories of growing up things with my brothers, and I will find totally different things. Now, for a while there, I just thought, well, they're just slipping a cog. I've got the master reference. And now what I really had to go to the alternative explanation is they experienced a different reality than I did for that particular event. And we kind of coalesced and came in and out of focus, so to speak, but different time tracks, different approaches.
Right. Yeah, well, I think I call that different holograms. I mean, if this is a video game and you're playing it, and you can interpret each other's holograms, but we're in different games. That's the way I look at it.
Yeah, I had a wonderful experience on that. I tell people, again, I like to validate things, and I'm blessed by the universe where I get a lot of demonstrations of things personally. And one of them was several years ago, and this is why I put so much strength in parallel universes. This is one of several examples, but this one's particularly intriguing. So my wife and I were invited to an art gallery showing of a friend of ours who's an artist, and she's also a psychic. And she was one of three artists to be featured in a storefront on an event here called a First Friday. So it's a special open time on the first Friday of the month where from 5 to 7 p.m. shops stay open for strolling. And so my wife and I got there about 5:30. Our friend is Sophia. And we go into the art gallery, and quick glance around. I don't see Sophia, but so we stroll around and we find Sophia's artwork. It's on these display boards, and there's two other artists, and we snack on the carrot sticks and the celery sticks. We notice what looks like an owner, maybe sitting at a table at the far side of the room, and she has a young man who's taking photographs of the guests, and we hear his camera going periodically. We continue looking at our work, continue wondering where Sophia is, and after 45 minutes, we give up and say, well, Sophia must have had a personal emergency. And so we leave. And that night, I email Sophia, and I just get a little snarky with her. I say, well, that's pretty cheeky of you. You invite us to your art gallery showing, and you don't even go yourself.
No.
Well, about 2 weeks later, I get an email from Sophia. She said, Dave, I found your email very intriguing because I was there in the gallery the whole time, the whole evening. And she said, not only that, I went back and met with the owner. We went through all of the photographs of the guests, and you and your wife didn't show up in any of them.
Out of phase. You were out of phase. Yep.
Yeah, so here we are. It's not just Dave and Dave's imagination. Dave has his wife who experiences what Dave experiences. Sophia has a store owner who experiences what she experiences. We're both in identical settings, and yet we aren't in the same place.
I understand. I went down to Arkansas to dig up crystals with a girlfriend, and stopped at a restaurant. And we stood there, and it looked like a 1950s restaurant with people in farming clothes and beehive hairdos and everything. And finally, they never sat us. It was like they didn't see us. So I finally touched the guy that was getting you to your seat, the receptionist, but whatever you want to call him, the greeter, who couldn't see us. He couldn't see us. I had to touch him, and then he finally. So I know what that's like. I have done that. In fact, it's kind of fun, actually.
Yeah, I've been invisible in front of other people 3 or 4 times, and I didn't perceive anything different about myself. It was their reaction, because suddenly, like you're saying, I snapped into the reality, and all of a sudden they were startled, that I was right there, and they hadn't seen me approach.
That's right, because, you're out of phase with their hologram. That's great. So one thing Harlan said here is cause and effect are never separate. It's a Course in Miracles, is what he says.
I would agree with that, but I think that we are getting into a time situation here where we're going to see more things that happen, and then suddenly we'll snap into a reality that there's an effect that caused it. But I think the cause was generated backwards in time to make it work. Here's a good example. So I've been doing clearing work for about 12 years. And in my clearing process, the first phone call, I talk to the client. We jointly fill out a worksheet that has all the different types of entities and energies. I muscle test and tell them what to put in their worksheet. This is what I'm going to clear. I allow a week between the first and second phone call for me to do the clearing. And in the second phone call, I talk to them about the process, the results, how to protect themselves, things like that. Once or twice in the past, I discovered, oh goodness, I meant to clear this several days ago, and here I am the morning of the phone call, and I thought, I'm going to try something, and I backdated my clearing time 3 or 4 days before, and then I did the clearing. When I talked to them, inevitably, every time I did this, they said, yeah, back on last Wednesday, I noticed that the house really changed and the energy felt better.
Wow. So it changes their experience. Yep.
Yeah. And so the clearing process goes back in time. And, if you want to call that a cause and effect, where I generated a cause in the past and the effect now is that they feel good and they have a memory of it feeling good several days ago, that's fine. I think these things are getting looser and looser in our reality. So I think things are shifting. I think we're going to find a whole lot of Mandela effects showing up out of all the coronavirus stuff circulating on the media. And I think we're going to have people, not just because of truths, half-truths, and outright lies on social media about who said what when, but I think even the timeline, different people are going to have different timelines for what happened with the coronavirus, who said what, who proposed what for the fix, and when we got out of the social isolation and got back into a normal running society.
So do you think we will? It feels like we're shifting. That's why I call it the pause before the reset. It feels like this was engineered in a divine way for us to slow down and work on our own self and not be so distracted. But I mean, this is a time for all of us to heal a lot of our stuff. Do you agree?
Yeah, well, when I was a kid, growing up in Wichita, Kansas, I spent many spring or summer afternoon down in the basement because of tornado sirens. And there's always that sense of dread having to go hide out, and then there's always a sense of relief coming back out. I never expected in my lifetime to sort of have the tornado sirens go off and keep us in our houses for 2 or 3 months. I just never saw that one coming. And it's sort of the same feeling. And it's truly forcing a lot of people to reevaluate their lives. Now, some people are just coasting, and that's going to be true. I mean, there's an average mix of people, but there's going to be some who are truly going to see things differently. Probably a whole lot of people who really took teachers for granted and now have to homeschool their kids are seeing teachers in a different light and are going to be more respectful and encouraging their kids to be more respectful in school. Not this type of thing. Well, yeah, I want you to take care of my kids. I want you to raise my kids. And oh, by the way, I don't want you to hurt little Johnny's feelings. I think I think parents are going to become more realistic about the role of teachers in raising their kids, and so I see that as something I see us having a challenge where it's one thing for the government to say everybody go hide out in your houses for a while until the crisis is passed. But now we're running into a lot of pushback because a lot of people say, okay, the crisis is passed. The death rates weren't these astronomical numbers that everybody was putting out in fear, and we're ready to accept the risk. I mean, 40,000 people die on highways a year. We accept the risk that we're going to drive at 70 or 80 miles per hour on freeways, and occasionally somebody's going to have a problem and they're not going to make it through the rest of that day. We accept that risk.
Right.
And when we get medical treatment, there are so many complications from prescribed treatment, prescribed drugs, mistakes, that we may lose 1 million people a year due to medical issues that are improperly carried out, improperly diagnosed. We accept that risk because we see the bigger gain. Well, we see the bigger gain in having a thriving economy with stores open and businesses and everything. And we accept, I think a lot of people are starting to push back and just say, we're going to accept the risk that some people are going to get this illness and they're going to die. And that's really tough, but we accept that every year with the flu. We accepted it with SARS. We accepted it with avian flu. We accepted it with H1N1. We accepted it with HIV. We didn't all quarantine with HIV, and they said, well, it requires, very personal contact to transfer it. But I think people they've had enough now, and they understand ordinary precautions. Wash your hands a lot. Keep your hands out of your eyes and nose. Don't cough on people. If you feel a fever, don't go out. I think people have had that ground into them. They understand that, and I think they are ready to return to a pretty high level of normalcy. and they're getting fed up, and we're coming into summer. Summer is great for sunlight. Sunlight kills viruses. Yeah, let's get everybody outside to charge up their vitamin D and kill the virus, into sunlight, and let's move on. So, yeah, I think people have just about had enough. And so it's going to cause them to evaluate politicians, and whether politicians now are lording it over them and exercising their muscle. And I think we're going to see a lot more lawsuits showing up on pushing back.
Well, yeah, and I think that what's happened is maybe I'm always looking at the high road of all of this, but I'm
yes.
looking at the opportunity. I mean, I've never had this time to work on myself, to read the books I want. I mean, the first thing when it happened, it was like, oh, this is what I came here for, and I've been very busy. I've been very lucky that that people that wanted to get their work out in the world decided, okay, time to pull the trigger.
Yeah.
So I have been busy, but I have gotten to work on myself a lot more than I would have, because I would have put my customer and all my family and everything first, and I wouldn't have spent the time on myself. So this has been a strange gift in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah. And I think people also need to look for opportunities to be entrepreneurial with this. If you're the owner of an office building, things look kind of glum right now because the handwriting's on the wall. A lot of companies are going to reassess the idea of people working out of their houses and not needing to show up at an office. I also see, sadly to say, a lot of retail businesses going out of business. But if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start a retail business, man, oh man, look for good deals coming up in strip malls and other places. 4 months ago here in Denver, you couldn't find retail space that was reasonably priced. Everybody was, full. They didn't care, take it or leave it. Right. They're going to be singing a different song now. And so it's going to create opportunities for other people who say, I have something that works best if you come to see me. Maybe I have an online presence, but there's a reason that I want to have a storefront, and it's going to be very attractive to you. And so here's an opportunity. Yeah. And you might be able to get deals where you can get a 6-month lease to just see if it's going to fly and not be locked down to something that's, if your business does go out of business, that you're trapped paying rent for years. Right. Anything like that. So lots of opportunities here. I mean, lots of opportunities for online stuff. Everybody's discovered online shopping. Everybody's gone to the great Amazon God store, and I think a lot of people are going to get a little bit tired of Amazon and just start wondering, between Amazon and Google, both of them are going to be targets, I think, for antitrust action once we get back to a little bit more normal operation. And if they do some breaking up of Amazon into business segments, there may be a lot more opportunities for other entrepreneurs online to offer goods and services. So, be aware of how this is going to produce opportunities. It's the same idea as the stock market. A stable stock market, today the Dow is 22,000, tomorrow the Dow is 22,001. It doesn't give people very many opportunities to look for great things. Man, if the Dow goes up 900 yesterday, it goes down 400 today, tomorrow goes up 2,000. Yeah, there may be opportunities if you're savvy and if you catch the rising star there. The old thing, buy low, sell high. You may be able to take advantage of that. So, from a business point of view and a growth point of view, this is a change. It's a shifting, and paradigms are going to move, and it's time to look for opportunities.
Right, and that's what's so good about small business owners, conscious business owners, is that they're flexible. They're in the flow.
Yes.
And it's because of their focus on service. Because they can serve better if they have something you need right now. Okay, so we only have a little more time, and of course, I think I have to have you back because
I'd love to. I'd love to come back.
Because I wanted everyone to know that Dave has a fabulous radio show called Dave the Mystic. And last night, you had James Redfield from the Celestine Prophecy on it, right? So,
Yeah, oh, yes.
how long
That's wonderful.
doing your radio? That's how I knew you. That I'd watch my friends be on your show. You never asked me. But anyway, how many years have you done that?
Close to 10 years.
Wow.
It started out in a funny way. I had 2 phone calls from people saying, "Oh, we really think you do a great job on the radio." Oh, well, that's pretty flattering. And we'd like to book you for a series of 8 shows. Oh, well, that's really good. And all you have to do is pay us $5,000, and then we'll sell advertising, and you'll get the excess, of that all back. And it's like, I don't think so. Nobody knows who Dave Barnett is. And a friend of mine said, "Why are you talking to them when you can do a show on Blog Talk Radio for free?" And so I got in on the early days of Blog Talk Radio when you could have an evening show, you could do an hour, and it was free. And then after about 2 or 3 years, they filled up so much that then they started charging. But I've continued to do that. So I've done about 470 shows every Monday night at 8 p.m. Denver. Dave the Mystic is on the radio. So it's blogtalkradio.com/Dave the Mystic. And you can go back to my archives. Supposedly on my plan, I can only archive about 150 shows. I guess they've grandfathered me because you can find all my shows back to show 1.
Wow.
If you want to scroll back through them. And they all have a description, so you can see the guests. I have authors, I have intuitives, I have healers, other people doing very interesting healing systems and things. So I really try to get a mix in there of all these different things.
It's perfect. It's very similar to the audience and the features that I'm doing too, because I see all of this is great resources for people that we have the not the luxury, but I've been doing this for 20 years. So I have a network of people, and when I started doing this show, I was just featuring my clients. Hey, you want to be on my show? So anyway, well, thank you so much, Dave. I've got your website here. It's davethemystic.com. I highly recommend you go and sense out if you feel that Dave could help you work through this is a perfect time to work on yourself. The energies are very high, very supportive for change and flow. And so his work is quite remarkable. And people are saying thank you. We've got Harlan's asked for Elizabeth Tucci to come. And he says, thanks, Dave. Thanks, nice. Exactly.
Well, thank you, all your listeners. And I appreciate them staying up with this show. And I appreciate them being there and giving us their support.
Yeah, well, is there any other way that you'd like people to contact you before we sign off, so we make sure that they have access?
Well, I'll make this offer. I mean, people can always email me, and my email is dbarnett, DBARNETT, @holisticbeliefs.com. So that's an easy way to email me. The other thing I'll offer is I've maintained a book list over the years. It's about 3 pages now. It's categorized. And these are books that I would highly recommend in different areas of metaphysics, healing, things like that. And if people would like a copy of that, I'm happy to send them that list. If they just email me and put book list in the subject line, I'm happy to respond and send them a copy of that book list so they can use that for reference.
And probably, if you looked back there, I probably have most of them.
Probably.
I'm a bookaholic. There was a, I think it was Outer Limits or one of those shows in black and white where the person, there was a big bomb or something, and the person could read for the rest of their lives. And it was like, that's kind of the way I felt when we got locked. Like, I can finally read. But I have more books than I could ever read in this
Yeah,
life.
my bookshelves down in the basement. I track it on an Excel spreadsheet, and I'm close to 800 books now.
Oh my gosh. See, and that's what I think that idea of Edgar Casey where you could sleep under, have it under your pillow.
Yes, and just absorb it.
Amazing. Well, thank you very much. Carlos says, thank you very much. Very interesting. Terry, Harlan, Zach, Kate Thomason was here for a little while. And
Oh, great,
yeah,
great.
I tagged her. So she's one of my clients. I really, she's a doll. So
Yes, yes.
yes,
Very nice person.
yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dave. And I look forward to learning more from you as well. Thank you for your insights and your clarity. It's really a joy to know more about you. Thank you.
Well, and I'm going to talk to you about getting you on my show. I'd love to have you on.
That was, you don't have to, I was just kidding. But thank you. We gotta rock. We've been here an hour, so we gotta rock. But
Okay.
I'll try to put your email and everything, but if there's, please, if you can answer people so that they'll be able to contact you directly. I really
Yes.
want to let people know your expertise as a resource, because I really think they could get a lot of help right now. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you. I
yeah,
appreciate that.
yeah. Okay, well, thank you. Bye, everybody. Please
Bye. Take care. We'll see ya.
Please share if you think it'll help other people. Please, please. Thank you.